I was terrified. I can't ever remember being more scared of saying yes to something. I was terrified. And it turned out, it was a happy ending. It reminded me that if you're scared of something, you should probably do it.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Rosalind Chao is an actor. She sat down with me in cyberspace to talk about the work.
When you land the role and you get the script, what is the first thing you typically like to do to begin the process of inhabiting that character?
I read the script over and over and over. That's first. I am one of those people that believes that, the words are golden. They're there for a reason, and I don't feel it's up to me to change them unless the director likes that improv thing, then I'll do that. But so that's the first thing I do. And subconsciously, just reading it over and over, things pop into your head that are links to something that can fill you. Just subconsciously, just the reading it over and over again. So timing is always important. Right now with COVID, it's so hard to time, if you have a project coming up, it's so hard to time. But I
Wait, what does that mean though? What do you mean by time? You mean like the idea of having that fill up like you're talking about, and timing for the set?
Right. From when you start to work. So I probably start differently than others in that I work backwards. So I usually, and it depends on the role, but I usually like to read through over and over. I like to feel like I know the words so that enough at a certain point later on, I like to know the words so well that a train could drive right past or over me, and I would be able to get up and say, my cue. So ideally, I like to have that happen, but that process usually happens. It depends on the project, but it usually happens as I'm working on it, working on the character. At some point, I do make kind of a. It's actually the last thing. I do make kind of an outline of how I see what I see their art doing. But what works for me isn't what would work for someone else.
I know, and this is what's been fascinating about this, that so many people have different ways of doing. This is not like brain surgery where it's like you have to go in through that part, through the canal, and then you have to do that, and then you cut here. There's so many people have different ways of doing it, slightly different, and some of these ways really make so much sense to certain people, and some of them don't, and some of them are going to get there in that way, and some of them are going to get there in another way. It's so fascinating.
And then after you do all the work, I actually like to throw it all away. So I don't marry myself to anything because the other actor can bring something that ignites something I hadn't even entered my core, and I like to be open to accidents, happy accidents.
You have to have been on every single kind of television production set. What ingredients in terms of environment on a set, particularly in television, works best for you as an actor? Because sometimes on these shows you're showing up, and they've been doing these shows for a long time. They're maybe even a well-oiled machine, but you're showing up there and just doing your day's work or a couple of days' work. Or even if you want to do it on the negative way and talk about the negative, like the things that that don't work.
I've had both because it's almost like I have huge fear of commitment, which is weird for somebody with 2 kids and a long marriage. But I don't like the idea of doing a series. For me, it wasn't my personality to do 22 episodes. So I was like a professional guest star for a long time. And I think the key ingredient is a happy set. And it usually comes from whoever's number one on the call sheet, usually sets the tone of the set. So if number one's not happy, no one's happy, really. It can be pretty terrible. I mean, I've had great situations. I mean, my first real, it turned out to be a long gig because it was M.A.S.H, and that turned into a long one. That's the one where I was really a kid, but I had to lie up to get. I got the part, and then they took it away from me. And I was at the grocery store, and I saw in the National Enquirer that there was some picture of some girl saying the new star of M.A.S.H, and it wasn't me.
Wow.
And so I went back and I called my agent, and he said, yeah, I didn't have the heart to call you to tell you, but they let you go unless it was when I filed my paperwork, my what's it called, the underage paperwork, because I
Yes.
So they said, unless you're 26. Are you 26? If you're 26, the part would be yours. And I said, oh, what a coincidence. Yes, I am. But it was worth it. The lie was totally worth it. And I never would have said this in an interview earlier, but it was the best first.
I don't think people in this generation realize how big of a show that final show was. I mean, I think it's still the biggest audience, I think, of a show.
TV, yeah, I think so. I think that there was a Super Bowl that came close, but it was such a huge audience that I think they said that during commercial breaks, the water levels changed because everybody went to flush.
I heard that.
But the funny thing is, I never got, I remember being at, in a locker room, I used to like to go swimming, like swim laps. And I remember being in the locker room, being stark naked, and two ladies talking about the last episode right next to me. I had no clue.
Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? Let's talk about something that you called one of your most fond experiences ever that just happened recently at the National Theater.
Oh.
The Great Wave.
Yeah, I want to go back.
What made that so special?
Well, I hadn't done theater in 10 years. And the fact that it's just everything was about the work for the most part. I mean, I think the younger actors there are now more similar to the younger actors here. So there is, the business does seep in there. But just getting on your feet and doing theater every night, and the production team, they were dreamy. I mean, we had the best stage manager, the best everything. It was just dreamy. The set design, the whole situation. They I had something terrible happen while I was there too. I got hit by a car.
Wow.
And even the way they took care of that was, it was wonderful. It's a wonderful experience to do theater, and then to do theater at the National, which is the pinnacle, I think, was, a delight. And we were doing a play that was about something as well. And so it was a real gift. I'm very grateful. I mean, that was a gift.
And you love that nightly thing. I mean, how long was the run? It wasn't terribly long, right?
2.5 months.
Yeah, that's perfect, right?
Yeah, it was. And I do, because you can make it better every night. And then sometimes what was really good for me is not beating myself up if it wasn't what I had really wanted it to be. So that was something that I got better at, because I do self-flagellate all the time. I always, after I'm done shooting something, I always think, oh, why didn't I do this or that? So, I usually keep it to myself, but I really tried to not go through that cycle in my head.
And we have to talk about something you've said a couple of times. You've been trying to, I think you've given this up, but you've been trying to avoid acting.
Yeah, it wasn't that I was trying to avoid acting. I just always felt like I couldn't figure out why they couldn't hire somebody better. I do self-sabotage a lot, and I'm still guilty of it. I catch myself now, or, I mean, my husband now feels like he can call me on it without me arguing with him. But like The Great Wave, I almost backed out. And then, and the getting hit by a car, I've often wondered if subconsciously that was a weird thing to happen. But I ended up healed, had surgery, and was fine by the time we had to go into rehearsal. But
I believe in crazy stuff like that. I have to tell you, I've talked to so many actors that said that they were looking for ways of getting sick during plays, or when it really hit them that they were in this, and they could not. I mean, they've used so many eloquent ways of saying this, like they couldn't believe they were doing this to themselves.
It feels crazy. I mean, not in The Great Wave, I did feel like I was so, beforehand, it seemed like a task that was so scary. I was going to be working with English actors who had all trained at, RADA, Lambda, whatever. And then they had English accents. I was going to have to do an English accent. I'm married to an Englishman, but he laughs. I mean, up until that point, he used to laugh at my fake English accent. It was not it wasn't on my resume, let's put it that way. I wasn't known for that. And then, when I got there, they had an amazing dialogue coach who, as it turns out, had been at drama school with my husband, gave me all sorts of dirt about him when he was young. And, I was able to, it gave me the opportunity. I don't know if it's my absolute best working experience in my whole life, but what it was it was pivotal in that it reminded me that if you're scared of something, you should probably do it. Because I was terrified. I can't ever remember being more scared of saying yes to something. I was terrified. And it turned out, it was a happy ending. And I remember one of the girls saying to me just before preview, "Aren't you scared?" I mean, she listed all the reasons why I should be scared. And I turned to her and I actually said, "No, I'm excited," because I felt prepared. I mean, it just it forces you to really, it impels you to prepare. That being said, I do know that feeling that other actors have said to you. I remember sitting in a car outside. I was replacing somebody in a play, and I had only had, I can't even remember how long, but I remember I'd only been on stage saying all those lines, I think like 3 times because of a lot of circumstances. And I remember getting in my car and seeing a bus come by, and it was right after the first preview. And I remember thinking, if I get out of my car now, I can get hit by the bus and I won't have to go on tomorrow night. So I get it.
As a way of talking about Mulan, I have a strange question, which is, I imagine there's a certain experience making an indie movie where there's so little money that you almost have to be careful with the costume that they give you, because there's only one or maybe 2, and so there's some kind of specialness to it, and it's on you, and you're nodding your head. So, but I'm imagining though that there's also, like with Mulan, where the costumes are so intricate, beautifully done, detailed to the extreme, that it's another kind of experience when you put those on. Just talk about those 2 experiences, if those are true.
Yes, that's so true. I'm careful anyway. I'm such a good girl. I really am. Like, I put the napkin on my thing, or I get changed before eating. I'm very cautious no matter what the budget is. But Costumes are, when you were talking about the process, that's why I leave myself open, because very often the first fitting, it fills me. Like maybe I'm I think I'm, I don't know, 80% full. I don't know. But then I go into costumes and it swings me another way. Or laundromat, when I did laundromat, the designer of that, Ellen, it was just, she was phenomenal in that. When I saw the costumes, I realized, oh, I didn't realize that we were doing it in a fantastical sense, this character. Mm-hmm. And so it made me like, it just flipped a switch a little bit. Oh. She was so helpful about how Steven Soderbergh was thinking about all the characters in the movie. So it definitely informed me. And a lot of times I try to leave a lot of decisions open for after the fitting. I like to have the fitting a little bit sooner, as soon as I can, because of that. But yeah, so Mulan had wonderful designers as well. And yes, it did help me to understand there was a little bit of the aging process, which I didn't know that they were going to take it, like start older and go even older than that. Mm-hmm. I didn't know it. A lot had to do with casting, husband, wife matching and all that. So they, the nature of the costumes in that definitely, you got to see how people moved in those days, and when she was dressed for the matchmaker, how she moved, and the sense of what are people going to think about Mulan, all that. Yeah. I did imagine her, I had thought she was going to be a little more, how do I put it, rural than they ended up being. So it informed me as well.
And what about being in New Zealand? Like if they wanted to do this on the back lot or whatever, is there a significant difference for you on the set there, all the way over there around the world, when action is called? I'm not talking about like getting there and that wonderful experience of that. It's beautiful and everything. I'm talking about when action is called. Is there a difference in the feeling that helps you?
The only difference is what you were saying. Forget about that, which is the bonding that happens when you're away from wherever your home base is, the bonding that happens between the actors, having your hotel room next to, the fellow actor that you're working with. That's the only difference, because really imagination ideally takes over no matter where you are. Yeah. So there are times when I did What Dreams May Come, there were times where we couldn't see all the special effects, and they're like, okay, now an angel's flying and all the, so you really have to just I just put myself in the head of where I am, no matter where I am. But there is some value to the bonding that happens.
I bet. It's Robin Williams' birthday today, I think.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. We don't get over these losses, do we?
I'm never going to get over him being gone.
Yeah.
He's, he really, what a wonderful human. I mean, I can't even, there are too many things. Anything would trivialize how I feel about him. I mean, I think at one point I did, we had to get pulled out to special effects lake up in Northern California. There were these sets in Northern California, and a huge warehouse for the special effects. And we would get towed out every day and be out there from morning till, the evening. And it would just be him and me. And then they would bring the crew out, and we'd come back for lunch or they had whatever. And also there were times where he had to be at the mountaintop and I felt like I really got to know him in a way that, He's a really good person. I can't think of another way of putting it. And
Yeah.
he's generous. Oh God, you would bring this up, but he's very generous. I mean, in a way that is unusual. It seems like the world's askew because he's not here. He was a really wonderful person to work with. I can't think of another, description. Just he's a wonderful human. I mean, I can give you examples, but they'd be trivial examples
Yeah.
that didn't have to do with me of his generosity. I mean, I remember we were doing improvs. We had to do 2 weeks of improvs before we started Wet Dreams. And one of the improvs, it's not my favorite acting improv in general, but we had to be an animal. And I can't remember how it happened, or did we all have to be bears or something? And Cuba Gooding accidentally knocked Robin's nose. It looked like it could have been broken.
Wow.
But he was more worried about Cuba not feeling bad than he was about his nose. You know what I mean? That's just his lovely person.
Yeah.
And he actually said something to me that I think of every time I work. I remember we did a scene that ended up not in the movie. They had to change the ending because the studio or whatever. But there was a scene, and I remember thinking at the end of the scene, I don't do this anymore, but I remember thinking, this could have been better. But there were so many outside factors involved that, I didn't say anything except for to Robin. I just said, I can't remember. I think the shot that was really great, something happened with lighting, camera, whatever. And he said, yeah, we always have to keep in mind it's lightning in a bottle. And sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't. And when you don't, you just have to say, okay, just keep plugging away. I'm bastardizing what he says, but every word out of his mouth wasn't like a joke. It was, really was. When we were out in the water, I felt like he was one person. Then as soon as we'd come back and people would come towards him and you could see the look on their face, like, what's he going to say?
Yeah.
We'd, switch over to make other people happy. That wasn't really, I don't know that that's what made him happy. I don't know. But I mean, I only worked with him for that brief time, but from what I could see, he had so much more. He was so, a man of great depth.
You have said that after you were in 1,000 Pieces of Gold, that process of performing in that movie made you stronger.
Yes. Well, first of all, to be honest, that's the last time I've seen myself on the big screen from beginning to end.
Wow.
I don't know if I feel like I could let me put it in a positive way. I feel like I could turn that performance in better now. But it made me stronger because just playing Lalu, and the research that I did about her helped me to understand that, you can survive just about anything. I mean, if you're still breathing, you can really, it's how you look at your circumstances, because there were other women who were in the same circumstances as Lalu. She was the first pioneer woman, right? But they didn't all end up being the first pioneer woman, but it was just her way of thinking that turned her into, she's a legend in Idaho and that area. They have museums to her. Her name's Polly Bemis. They know her as Polly Bemis. And it's mainly her resourcefulness. I think I learned so much. I learned something from every character. But that was a wonderful experience working with Chris Cooper. I learned a lot from him because he was a much more experienced actor at the time. And the director was very nurturing. I was young and she really taught me how to research projects. At that point, I'd been studying with a wonderful teacher named Peggy Feury. I would say just about everyone in my class ended up except for me, ended up being a big box office star. There were people who auditioned for the major role that made them famous. They brought the scene to the class. People used to ask her for recommendations for, big films. But she came from the neighborhood, Lee Strasberg neighborhood playhouse. And so I definitely learned that style of training. And then I think on Thousand Pieces of Gold, I was still in that. But then over the years, I've learned how to adapt that to make it work better for me.
Mm-hmm.
I always compare it to like when a woman is learning how to give birth, you learn there are two ways. There's a Bradley method and there's Lamaze. And some people are just Lamaze and some people are just Bradley. But I found that the best way for giving birth for me was a combination of both. And then I learned how to combine the two. And it's the same with acting. I felt like after Peggy died, when she died, there was a big hole in Los Angeles of, a lot of major actors who would come to Lily Tomlin worked out her one-woman show. She would come at night and work that out. Horton Foote, the great playwright, would work out scenes from his plays there. And Sean Penn was there, and, his brother, Chris, and Nick Cage. They were all there. So when she passed, then, I started studying at different studios, and I kind of got, more of a potpourri of things that I combine to put into my soup. But Peggy was the first person who made me think that I didn't just have to play Asian roles in the way people expected Asian roles to be played.
And that seems like a really important thing to have given to you when other influences are, no, you have to lean toward that to get the role.
Exactly. She changed my life. I mean, honestly, we were doing Chekhov. We would all do the same scenes from the same play, which was good because so we would do Chekhov one season, we would do Pinter, we did all the classics and as well as some modern, but, and sometimes I would be doing a Horton Foote play, she made me feel like I could play one character. One character had the same textures as Nina and the Seagull, or you know what I mean? I didn't have to just do the one-dimensional Asian, stereotypes.
Yes.
I remember once saying to her after I got a good note, because she could be tough. Once after I got a good note, of course, I'm hard on myself. So, of course, I can't take the compliments as well as I can take the criticism. So after I remember saying, well, yeah, if only I got to play roles like this in real life. And she said, but the roles you'll get, you will play better. And I thought that was quite, not better. She said, you'll play like this. You'll have more to give. And I'm hoping she's right. I'm learning. I'm still learning.
I heard you talk about how when you were a young actor, you dreamed of a time when you wouldn't have to kiss someone or put on a bathing suit.
Did I say that to in an interview?
A number of them. And then you said, all I had to do was just wait. Because your dream came true. That's what you basically were saying.
No more. The last time I was asked to be in a bathing suit, well, no, I was asked after that too. There was a time where every job, even when I was pregnant with my daughter, somebody asked me to shoot something and I opened the script and there's a bikini scene and I thought, what the hell? I told them I'm pregnant. Where do I have to be? And Yeah, there in Joy Luck Club there was supposed to be a scene where we were by the beach and my little brother dies while I'm watching him, and that was in the book. But and I was going to have to be in a bikini 2 weeks after giving birth. But at that point, I don't think I cared, and I also I trusted Wayne to not, I don't know, show the baby pouch. But insurance actually put a stop to that. But yes, now it's much. Now I feel like the roles are more fun. It's not. It really wasn't about the bikini. I wanted to be hired for something a little bit, something that I could sink my teeth into, I think.
What's the dream now? Because something I can't wrap my arms around, and yet, so I keep flip-flopping about how I feel about this, but with somebody that has as many credits as you have, why would you need to audition? Is the dream now to say, anything you can give me, I have something that I've done where you can see I know how to do this?
Yeah, I understand the process of auditioning because I understand also part of it includes, do they want to work with you? Yeah, I think I've changed so much since working in England. I don't know if it was prior or post, but now I try and look at it from the point of view that I'm auditioning them too. I kind of want to see if I would want to work with them. So if they give me a note and I'm thinking, okay, so that's good to know. And then I take the note and whatever, flip it around. I get a window into them and they get a window into me. I used to reward myself going to auditions by buying myself like an ice cream cone or a cupcake or something.
Isn't it insane that you would have to, that we have to, that means it's such a troubling experience that you have to reward yourself for putting yourself through that, basically is what you're saying.
As it is. With the good people, it isn't. With the good people, you feel like really good directors, you feel like it's almost like going into a rehearsal, and I try to take it out of that they're judging me standpoint or frame of mind. But I did have one audition, I will say, not long ago that has made me not want to again, where somebody was quite, not very pleasant. And I remember thinking afterwards, why did I do this? Why did I agree? And it wasn't even for something I necessarily wanted to do, but I didn't want to be a snob. So, I agreed and I had kind of, yeah. So those awful ones can still pop up once in a while. And sometimes they've had a bad day and they think you're nice and they think that you'll just take it. But yeah, I went to an audition. I'll tell you, I went to an audition because really somebody might learn from this. I went to an audition and, to be honest, the writing, I felt like I could give it put a little of my own sauce in it. I didn't change the writing, but, I made the character, I just gave a little twist on the character. And after I was done, the person said something like, wow. And she said it in such a snide way.
Wow.
Like, well, that sure wasn't what we're expecting. And I said, okay, good. And as I was walking out, she goes, that was interesting. And I turned around, okay, and that was insulting. And I turned and I walked out. And I will never see that person again. I don't want to ever have to work with that person. If they had offered me the job after that, and it was a job that would have looked good on paper, but I don't think I would have done it because I could tell already, like right now, just telling you the story is kind of making me mad because she must have done it to other people too.
That makes me so mad. I mean, the exact opposite of this is what we need. The exact opposite. A hug upon entering is what you need.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's fine. I don't expect that much, but I certainly don't expect. I mean, she did a little jab, but I thought, I'm not going to take it that way. And so, I just kind of brushed it off. Okay, good. But it wasn't enough that I left the room not upset. As I had the door open, she had to try and throw another insult. And I thought, oh, that's really, that was pretty obnoxious.
I'm happy that you said something. And maybe that just went into that tiny brain for a second and impacted her.
I will tell you, it's rare. Honestly, I cannot.
Thank God.
Yeah. Just the fact that I remembered it. But I did think to myself, oh gosh, what if I was just starting out and somebody had treated me that way? That's hard. That would have been hard for somebody new to recover from. And that, when I think of that upsets me. But, it's fine. It was just a reminder that, there's all kinds. But I've been very lucky. I've had really great experiences. The casting director for Mulan, for example, I actually, when I went in, I wanted to meet her because I've always, Deborah Zane does really good projects, but I knew I was leaving for England. And so I said, I wanted to meet you and I got the material here, but I probably won't be able to do it. I'm leaving for England for 5 months. And she said, okay, I'm going to tell you something. I know we're supposed to shoot at this date, but it's already been pushed so many times. Let's just put you on. Let's just communicate and see what happens. And, she was so lovely and so like she was on my team, on my side.
Yeah.
That, okay. I hadn't really learned it that well. In my head, I hadn't thought that I was really going to be reading it, but I'll never forget that she really stuck her neck out.
That's really cool. Really cool.
Remained lovely. I mean, she's just really on actors. She wants to bring the best out of actors.
Is there anything that you do when you're not working to kind of feed your inner actor?
If anything, I try and not feed it too much. I mean, I'm very observant of people's behavior and I really enjoy, let's put it this way, I really enjoy empathizing and wondering what makes people tick. Even like if I'm going on a walk, somebody's not wearing a mask and I'm watching their body language, I'm thinking, what ran through their head? I can picture them leaving their house and what ran through there. So I go through a whole thing. And sometimes I'd like to turn that off. I also feel like in some ways I'm probably better when I'm working as a human being. Probably that's why everybody encourages me to work more. But when I had my kids, I took a lot of long breaks and I learned how to not work, which is good too.
But this to me means you're an actor in your bones.
Oh God. It's the only thing I know how to do. Semi okay. You know what I mean? But I do, somebody once said to me, an agent once said, I was about to say no to something and she said, Roz, I'm just going to say something. Because I said, well, the issue is this, and maybe the character's that. And she said, I think I just said no, but blank, whatever excuse. And she said, Roz, I'm going to tell you something. I just know how happy you are whenever you're acting. And you always have a hard time stepping into it. But once you step in, I always know you're happy. And the reason why I have a hard time stepping in is because it's a lot of work beforehand. I don't like to do things halfway. And I know how much work it's going to be. So, you know how it is. If you're going to clean out the garage, you put that off because, it's going to be days, weeks of, finding crap in there that you got to clean out.
But once you're in there and have it all laid out, then you're in heaven.
Right? Exactly. Exactly.
Rosalind Chao, thank you so much.
It was such a pleasure.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of IFP, the Independent Filmmaker Project. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.